America's most enchanting storybook villages. Certain corners of America transport you somewhere entirely different, not just geographically, but temporally, almost spiritually. The roadways don't follow harsh geometric patterns, they meander organically. Ancient trees create natural archways overhead, their branches interweaving like cathedral vaults. The residences appear individually crafted rather than factory-produced. Everything feels somehow insulated from contemporary chaos, quieter, unhurried, strangely sheltered. Welcome to Schmancy, your destination for exploring everything affluent, restricted, and delightfully extravagant. Today, we're journeying through America's most breathtaking fairy tale communities. These are places where you'll encounter ivy-draped homes that appear lifted from illustrated classics, momentarily forgetting you're in 21st century America. Communities where residences were constructed to mature gracefully, where every detail suggests someone orchestrated the entire neighborhood with beauty as the primary objective. Join us as we explore concealed garden suburbs, established wealth enclaves, and villages that somehow exist suspended in another epoch. Without further delay, here are the 11 wealthiest storybook villages across America. Number 1. Forest Hills Gardens. Hidden within Queens, Forest Hills Gardens feels utterly severed from the remainder of New York City. Development commenced in 1909 under the Russell Sage Foundation, designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, Jr., establishing one of America's pioneering planned garden communities. The philosophy centered on neighborhoods radiating peace, beauty, and intentional design. Rather than rigid urban grids, you discover meandering lanes, concealed footpaths, intimate parks, and English Tudor homes featuring dramatic rooflines, brick chimneys, and meticulously tended gardens. Communities like this are virtually impossible to replicate in our current era. What renders Forest Hills Gardens particularly remarkable is the stark juxtaposition. Just beyond the neighborhood boundary lies Austin Street, one of Queens's most bustling commercial corridors, saturated with restaurants, cafes, grocery establishments, and perpetual activity. But crossing through Station Square with its ivy-wrapped buildings and old-world archways triggers an almost instantaneous atmospheric transformation. Streets become hushed, curved, and abundantly landscaped, while architecture begins resembling an affluent English suburb more than New York City. Number 2. Foxhall Village. Foxhall Village resembles an English countryside hamlet concealed inside Washington, D.C. Constructed during the 1920s, the community was engineered with sinuous roads and rows of Tudor-style homes filled with slate roofs, stone detailing, dramatic gables, and oversized chimneys. Even the streets curve with apparent intentionality, bestowing the neighborhood with a softer, more intimate atmosphere than most surrounding cityscape. What distinguishes Foxhall Village is its remarkable cohesiveness. Houses sit sufficiently close together to generate an authentic village ambience, yet the hills, landscaping, and mature trees prevent it from ever feeling compressed or urban. Between the vividly painted doors and carefully preserved architecture, portions of the neighborhood feel considerably more like an affluent London suburb than Washington, D.C. Number 3. Windsor Farms. Windsor Farms emerged during the 1920s as an upscale garden suburb patterned after the English countryside, featuring winding roads, abundant landscaping, and traditional manor-style architecture. Positioned near the James River in Richmond, the neighborhood gained recognition for its connection to actual English estates. 2 historic manor houses, Agecroft Hall and Virginia House, were dismantled in England, transported across the Atlantic, and reconstructed here piece by piece during the neighborhood's early development. Streets are bordered by brick colonials, Tudor revivals, stone homes, slate roofs, ivy-draped walls, and mature trees rendering the neighborhood secluded and distinctly old-world. Windsor Farms possesses the variety of streets where lawns are immaculately trimmed, houses recede behind greenery, and everything radiates expense without announcing itself too boldly. Even after a century, Windsor Farms remains among Richmond's most prestigious addresses and one of the most beautiful residential neighborhoods in the South. Number 4. Roland Park and Guilford. Roland Park and Guilford represent 2 of Baltimore's most stunning planned garden suburbs, positioned practically adjacent to each other. Together, these 2 villages feel like an alternate dimension of suburbia. Developed in the 1890s, Roland Park became among America's first streetcar suburbs, while Guilford followed in the early 1900s with even grander landscaping and stricter architectural planning. Homes range from ivy-covered Tudors to sprawling stone estates with manicured gardens. The landscaping truly sells the fantasy. Parks, medians, country clubs, botanical gardens, and enormous trees everywhere. You feel less like you're in a city neighborhood, and more like you accidentally entered a wealthy private enclave that somehow remained hidden for 100 years. Number 5. Carmel-by-the-Sea. Carmel-by-the-Sea feels less like a town and more like somebody's idealized recollection of Europe. Established as an artist colony in the early 1900s on California's central coast, it gained recognition for its whimsical cottages, hidden courtyards, storybook architecture, and refusal to develop like a typical American beach town. Many homes still lack street numbers, and the entire town feels intentionally scaled to remain quiet and visually cohesive. Carmel's streets feel more like a Hansel and Gretel forest than a neighborhood. Massive cypress trees arch overhead while cottages disappear behind gardens and greenery, rendering the entire town concealed from the modern world. Some homes resemble tiny English storybook houses with crooked roofs and arched doors, while others evoke Mediterranean villas covered in ivy and bougainvillea. Even commercial areas feel restrained and intimate, with small pathways, courtyards, and locally owned shops blending into surrounding residential streets. Don't let the cuteness deceive you. The homes may appear modest, but they regularly transact for millions of dollars. They're worth more than sprawling mansions in most parts of the country. By the way, did you know Clint Eastwood once served as Carmel's mayor? That's right, elected in 1986, he remains one of the town's most famous residents. Number 6. Bronxville. Bronxville is one of those places where you immediately comprehend why wealthy New Yorkers have been commuting from Westchester for over a century. Seriously, wouldn't you if you lived here? Developed in the late 1800s just north of Manhattan by William Van Duzer Lawrence, the village became popular with affluent residents seeking a quieter, more picturesque environment while maintaining city connectivity by rail. Despite its grand reputation, Bronxville is remarkably compact at just 1 square mile in size. Streets are lined with Tudors, stone homes, ivy-covered schools, and carefully maintained gardens bestowing the entire village a polished yet lived-in feel. Around the train station, the village center is filled with old brick storefronts, cafes, and tree-lined sidewalks rendering the neighborhood compact, walkable, and unusually cohesive for an American suburb. Number 7. Tuxedo Park. Upon entering Tuxedo Park, you'll feel as if you've stumbled into a hidden aristocratic realm frozen somewhere between the Gilded Age and an English countryside fantasy. Founded in 1885 by tobacco heir Pierre Larillard IV, this exceptionally private countryside retreat is hidden deep in the wooded hills of Orange County. The gated enclave was designed as an ultra-exclusive community for New York's elite, complete with winding roads, lakes, forests, and enormous estates inspired by English country houses. Architecture here leans heavily Tudor Revival and Gothic Revival, with steep roofs, towering chimneys, ivy-covered stonework, and manor homes appearing imported from rural England. Even the tuxedo jacket itself is said to have debuted at the neighborhood's famous Tuxedo Club in the late 1880s. What renders Tuxedo Park so mysterious is how private and guarded it remains. Massive stone gates mark the entrances, security controls access, and thick trees conceal many estates from public view, bestowing the neighborhood an almost secret society atmosphere. Over the years, residents included members of the Astor, Vanderbilt, and Morgan families along with other old money dynasties who treated the place like an American version of landed gentry life. Number 8. Winter Park. Winter Park was developed in the late 1800s as a winter retreat for wealthy northeastern families and still feels noticeably different from most Florida suburbs. The town was constructed around a chain of lakes, shaded residential streets, and a compact downtown centered on Park Avenue, which remains one of the state's most walkable and attractive shopping districts. The brick streets, giant oak canopies, and Mediterranean revival homes bestow Winter Park a dreamy atmosphere feeling more like a coastal European resort town than a modern Sunbelt suburb. Around downtown, cafes, boutiques, gardens, and older buildings sit beneath heavy tree cover, while lakes and narrow canals appear between streets and neighborhoods. The residential sections surrounding the lakes are especially recognized for their landscaping, historic homes, and quiet winding roads. This is a distinctive version of Florida, where emphasis falls on charm, beauty, and quality of life rather than spectacle. Number 9. Kenilworth. Kenilworth might be the Midwest's closest approximation to a hidden English village for wealthy people who consider anonymity a status symbol. Founded in 1889 by developer Joseph Sears along Chicago's North Shore, the community was carefully planned with leafy residential lanes, generous landscape lots, and strict architectural standards meant to preserve beauty and a sense of permanence. Homes are stunning without feeling obnoxious. You encounter Tudors with slate roofs, ivy-covered manor homes, elegant colonials, and perfectly maintained gardens tucked beneath giant trees. The entire village feels cohesive in a manner most suburbs simply don't anymore, with picturesque residential streets feeling intentionally designed rather than gradually pieced together over time. Number 10. Shaker Heights. Shaker Heights was developed beginning in the early 1900s by the Van Sweringen brothers, who set out to create an upscale garden suburb inspired by England's planned communities. They carefully crafted a cohesive garden-like aesthetic, created what is now the community's beloved nature centre, and enforced architectural standards that still shape the neighbourhood today. The community is especially recognized for its collection of Tudor Revival and Colonial Revival homes, many built with steep roofs, leaded windows, stone facades, and detailed brickwork. Some streets genuinely feel more English than Midwestern, with carefully preserved residential blocks appearing almost untouched by the passage of time. Number 11. Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook may be the South's ultimate hidden garden suburb. Planned during the 1920s outside Birmingham, the community was designed around winding roads, village centers, and heavily landscaped residential streets that followed natural terrain instead of flattening it. Today, it's Alabama's wealthiest town and has long attracted an old money crowd tied to Birmingham's banking, industrial, and business elite. The best part is the series of small village centers, like English Village and Crestline Village, which genuinely feel inspired by European town centers. Around them are Tudor cottages, brick homes, stone bridges, and leafy roads curving beneath giant trees. The neighborhood feels unusually cohesive and carefully preserved, with an atmosphere that's wealthy, quiet, and deeply residential rather than flashy. Conclusion. So there you have it, the most idyllic villages in the United States. The strangest aspect about these neighborhoods isn't just their beauty, but their intentionality. Most were designed around the radical concept that beauty, walkability, and atmosphere actually mattered, which, judging by modern subdivisions today, appears to be a lost art. Let us know in the comments which neighborhoods you'd actually relocate to. And if you know of any other hidden fairy tale neighborhoods in America, share below because honestly, there are more secret places like these than people realize. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more deep dives into the places that somehow escaped modern ugliness. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.